Welcome everyone to the Concession Stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of episode 1 and 2 of Disney Plus Marvel Animation brand new animated series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which dropped on Disney Plus this past Wednesday, January the 29th. And this brand new show explores Peter Parker's origin story and the early days as Spider-Man, and is set in an alternate timeline from the main films and TV shows of the MCU, where Norman Osborn becomes Peter Parker's mentor instead of Tony Stark. This show, I was super excited about when they announced this at Comic-Con, I think it was Comic-Con, what, about 3-4 years ago. If it feels longer when they announced this show, but it was initially called Spider-Man Freshman Year, where it was supposed to pick up his freshman year in high school, which it was going to serve as a origin story, and this still stays true. They just changed the title to Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of my favorite comic book heroes of all time. Love Spider-Man. Been reading the comics, watching the old 70s TV show that was horrible. But back then, it was money. Going to the Tobey Maguire films, the 90s animated show, and Andrew Garfield, and then we got blessed with Tom Holland in the MCU as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, and still ongoing. Apparently, they're working on Spider-Man. Is it 4? Yeah, 4 with him. But I was excited for this show because of the exploration into his origin story, because in the films we didn't get it. He showed up in Captain America Civil War. Tony Stark showed up in his apartment, recruited him, and we was off and running. He was already Spider-Man. Uncle Ben had already died, and he was out doing his thing in this little makeshift suit that he had made, and that's how we got introduced to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and it was excellent. And the films, goes without saying, have been excellent, especially the last film, Spider-Man No Way Home, just bananas good. And so, where's that origin? And trust me, I'm not one that's like, oh, I need to know the origin. I need to know, how did the spider bite him, and how did Uncle Ben die, and all this other foolishness. We've seen it. We've seen it. We've read it. It is really unnecessary. It's the same thing as watching Batman's parents get murdered in Crime Alley. We've seen it time and time again. If I see pearls getting scattered over that alley for young Bruce Wayne kneeling down and crying, I'm gonna lose my mind. We've been down that road. We know the origin. And so in this regard, we know the origin of Spider-Man, but there were so many changes, subtle, but changes nonetheless, when it comes to the MCU version of Spider-Man. So I was a little curious on how they were going to approach this. And yet and still, they still managed to change the origin in a subtle way. Well, it's not really subtle. They changed the origin big time for Spider-Man here. And I'm not mad at it. It's not like it's a betrayal of the Peter Parker origin story and the Spider-Man lore. It's just some big changes here, just for example. And before I go any further, I just want to express that there will be spoilers, not so much for the first 2 episodes that we're going to talk about a little bit, but more so about going forward, because there's a lot of characters that were introduced in these first 2 episodes who played major roles in these 2 episodes of the series that are going to make a impact on Spider-Man's life. So we'll see how it goes. They could flip it on his head and the villains that were set up could end up being heroes and vice versa. So we'll see how that goes going down the line. But um, first and foremost, the first spoiler, we know that in comic book lore, in the Tobey Maguire films, even in the Andrew Garfield film, Peter gets bitten by a spider. He goes home. He discovers that he has powers. He gets Uncle Ben to bring him to this wrestling match, and this is in the comics now. It's go to this wrestling competition, I should say, to win some money. Somebody robs that competition. Peter Parker lets him go because he's mad at the promoter because he didn't pay him correctly. That robber who he let go end up being the one who shot Uncle Ben, and that made the transformation, uh, uh, or at least the not so much transformation, but the shift in his way of thinking, especially being as though the last thing Uncle Ben told him, or one of the last things, was, "With great power comes great responsibility." We know the line, and so we got that, but here in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, that's not what happened. That is not what happened. Starting off with episode 1, which was entitled Amazing Fantasy, which is the first issue that Spider-Man appeared in. I believe that was the title of the comic that Spider-Man appeared in. But either way, I thought that was a cool nod. And we pick up, it's Peter Parker, and you can tell this is based in the MCU kind of a universe, not so much timeline, but the universe. We get Aunt May, a younger Aunt May who resembles Marissa Tomei. We get a young Peter Parker who kind of resembles Tom Holland, but not so much. But we know that's the Tom Holland Peter Parker. And Uncle Ben has, once again, he's dead. We still don't know what happened to Uncle Ben. We just know that Uncle Ben has gone on to glory. So that has happened. I liked how it was set up in this episode. Is that okay? We're not getting the origin, at least for the first 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I was like, okay, he's already Spider-Man. They did subtle little things to make it seem like he already had his powers. Then we come to find out, no, he doesn't. He's just Peter Parker. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So we're going to see him actually get bit by the spider. Okay, that's fine. But it was awesome to see that, well, let's jump into it. That scene where Doctor Strange shows up, he's fighting a symbiote, and it resembles Venom, but it's not Venom. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a symbiote. And they come from another dimension, and it's a portal that's open. And inside of that portal, we see a spider dangling down from that portal. And Peter Parker is his first day at school, first day at high school, and they're battling right outside this high school, and this symbiote is about to wreak havoc, about to kill somebody, this other student, and Peter Parker steps in and stops him. And keep in mind, Peter Parker doesn't have his power. He's not Spider-Man yet. And I thought that was genius to really show that the spider, the powers of the spider, is not what made Peter Parker a hero. He was a hero before he even got those powers. And that's something we never saw in any rendition of Spider-Man. And because we always picked up at the origin when he get bit by the spider. So I thought that was very, very smart and very, very cool to show that he had this hero inside of him. It didn't matter that he didn't have the powers, because he was about to get dealt with by that symbiote until Doctor Strange saved him. So I thought that was a cool nod as well. We get introduced to a few characters in this episode. We see Harry Osborn. We see Lonnie Lincoln in this episode. We see Norman Osborn in this episode. And so it was cool that they're introducing this different take on Spider-Man. Different, but the same. We're still in the MCU. It still feels like MCU, just on a different timeline. And me being slow, Kevin, I didn't pick up on the fact that it was a different timeline until I'd say the last 5 minutes of this episode. I'm like, wait, something's a little off here. The way I remember things going. We see the scene where Peter Parker, as Spider-Man, stops the car from running into the bus, and inside the car were criminals. And if you think back to Captain America Civil War, that is the exact same scene that Tony Stark shows Peter Parker, like, this is you. This is you. And we see Peter Parker stop that car from running into the bus. And it's the exact same scene, almost camera angles and everything. The only difference is this is animated, whereas in the movie it was live action. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. It's cool. So he goes back home. He finds the DVD player. Because if you remember in Captain America Civil War, when he returned home, he had an old DVD player that he found in the trash that he told Aunt May he was going to work on. It's perfectly fine DVD player. And he comes in, and we see that Aunt May is talking to somebody, and you're like, oh, it's Tony Stark again. So this is where it's going to pick up from. But it's not Tony Stark. It's Norman Osborn. And I'm like, oh man, what a twist. So we're in a different timeline. We're gonna tell a different type of story. I'm all for this because honestly, I was a little worried that they were gonna go down that road and just tell the story with Tony Stark and all this here. I'm like, well, we've seen up to this point. Why are we gonna do this again in animation? But we're going in a different timeline. I like that Lonnie Lincoln is his friend. Lonnie Lincoln is a good guy. I mean, generally a good guy. Too good. Too good, if you ask me. And somebody that good is not all that good. And if you read the comics, and this is a spoiler, if you read the comics and know who Lonnie Lincoln truly is, you know that it's going to be interesting encounter down the line between Spider-Man and his buddy. Lonnie Lincoln ends up becoming Tombstone. So I want to see how this all plays out because he's such a nice guy, and he takes on to Peter Parker so well. He honestly wants to be his friend, and you can tell early on he actually has love for him, as a friend. He's like, man, you're my buddy. Like he's his best friend, and you follow him home. And I'm expecting for the ball to drop. Like, okay, now this is where we find out that he's a jerk. No, he's not. He's not. He's coming from a good family and whatnot. And he's so helpful around the house. He's super smart. He's just as smart as Peter. It's just, I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. I can't wait to see how they make this turn. We see that Spider-Man saves Harry Osborn in this show from a group of thugs early on. I like that little encounter. So it's a lot going. It was a lot going on in that first episode. I was completely sold. I was like, man, this is going to be great. We get to the second episode, and I wasn't as excited. The second episode was kind of dry, to be 100% honest with you. We didn't get much Spider-Man action. The title of episode 2 is The Parker Luck. It just didn't pop. It didn't have that pop. It did at the very end when it was a nice little twist, but we had to wait to the very end to get that twist. But other than that, it really wasn't that exciting. We got introduced yet again to a couple of characters that are going to play a part down the line, whether it's this season of the show or next season or whenever it all comes together. But they're setting it up to have a rogues gallery of villains already there laid out for Peter Parker going forward. We get introduced to Caller Connors. Yes, not Kurt Connors, who becomes, or is it Kurt? who becomes the lizard. Either way, he's a Connors. But in this version, it's a female who's missing an arm, and she is Caller Connors, and we know that she will become the lizard down the line. And right now, they're working together at Oscorp on this team that Norman has put together in his little laboratory or whatever. And so that's going to be interesting as well to see how that relationship plays out and ultimately turns to a bad situation. But like I said, throughout this episode, this was mainly a Peter Parker episode. I guess that's why it's entitled The Parker Luck, because it really wasn't much Spider-Man in here. We get a couple of scenes with him. He battles Brutine and the pyromaniac. That's about it. It wasn't the greatest of episodes, but we do get that twist at the end of this episode where he's called up to Norman Osborn's office. He's apologizing to Norman Oswald. Norman Osborn. I got the penguin on the mind. That's a completely different universe. But anyways, and he's apologizing to him because he had to leave to go stop this pyromaniac, burn down this building and kill all these people. So as he was leaving, he changed into his makeshift Spider-Man outfit in the stairwell. Unbeknownst to him, there were security cameras, and Norman saw it. And so when he called him into the office, Norman played the video, and the episode ends with Norman saying, "So you're Spider-Man," and it went off. I was like, okay, this is interesting, because we're getting a show, or with any media, because I don't think in the comics Norman finds out Peter Parker. I don't think anybody found out until Civil War, when Peter Parker took off his mask in that comic book issue. But we're getting a version here where probably one of his deadliest foes knows who he is, and let's see how this go. This is going to be interesting. I am truly, truly, truly intrigued with this show. Even though the second episode wasn't as good as the first one, you put the two together, it's a good watch. I like it. And the animation, I can't leave without talking about the animation. I love the animation. This is that 3D cell animation that it looks so clean and it just looks great. I love it. It works for this show perfectly. I'm all in. I'm all in. I actually was sitting down and I felt like a kid again, because this show is mainly pointed towards kids. I'm gonna put it plainly. It's pointed towards the kids to draw them in, and I'm not mad at it. And we all got a little kid in us, and this show appealed to mine. I won't grade these first two episodes. I'll wait till after the season wraps up on February the 19th, because going forward it's going to be week to week, but they're going to play, I think, 2 episodes a week, 2 or 3 a week until the 19th of February. And so it's going to be quick. It's going to go by pretty quick, this first season. But I'm all right with it. I'm cool with it. I'll just wait till the end to grade the season as a whole. I would love to know, did you check out the first 2 episodes of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man on Disney Plus? Did you like it? Did you shoo it off? You was like, another Spider-Man? No, man, you can't get enough Spider-Man. Come on, people. This is this is great. Or have you not checked it out yet? I highly recommend it. It is a nice, fun, quick watch. Can't wait for the rest of this season. But let me know how you feel by email. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms and leave a comment there as well. Don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the Concession Stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Disney Plus brand new Marvel animated series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man episode 1 and 2. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.